Page 33, we're skipping a little bit just to get the main thrust of things here. So the basic question and resolution has been offered already. The question is, there's an outright contradiction, A, between statement of our sages. One statement, that the halachas of Torah Shebal Peh, the laws of the oral law, are forever. And then we have an opinion, a statement that mitzvahs betelis lasid lovei, mitzvahs in the future will be nullified, will not be forever. The question is even stronger considering who says that statement. It's Rabbi Yochanan. And Rabbi Yochanan says elsewhere that where do we have a hint to the revival of the dead? In the Torah, there are many hints. One of them was his Shabbos, Oz Yoshim Moishe. Incidentally, right? The song, it says, then Moishe will sing. Will sing? He sang. It's describing what happened. So from here we see there'll be a future time that he will sing. That's one hint. The other hint Rabbi Yochanan brings is about Truma. Rabbi Yochanan brings the pasuk that the Torah says to give Truma to Aaron. Now Aaron didn't go to Eretz Yisrael. Truma only kicks in, of course, when the Jews went into Israel and farmed land. So here we see there'll come a time we'll give him Truma. So they're going to be a mitzvah then? Of course. We're saying you're going to give him Truma. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is contradicting himself. Here he says mitzvahs betelis lasid, which is why he allows to be a dead person to be buried in shrouds made of kilayim. He's of the opinion it's permissible because mitzvahs betelis lasid, mitzvahs and nullified. He's the same person that says Aaron's going to get Truma. It's an outright contradiction. So we resolved it. We answered. And the answer is, the resolution is, mitzvahs will be nullified. What do we mean by mitzvahs? By mitzvahs, we mean the need to command them. And I don't just mean the need to command. We'll do it without being told, because we were already commanded. That's not the point. We mean this much deeper. When we say commandment, implicit in the commandment is a separation between the commander, the one who's commanded, and moreover, the object with which you're commanded or the act you're supposed to do. There's three things here. That will be no longer. In the era of Tchias HaMeisim, when Hashem is revealed fully on the earth, then his will be naturally observed and spontaneously without commandment, implying the degrees of separation, the 3 degrees of separation I just described, because all be unified with Hashem. To explain this deeper, or clearer, we explained last week and the previous week. There are 2 dimensions to mitzvahs, the external and the essential. Now, there are many levels, actually, to mitzvahs. Pshat, Remes, Drush, Sod. Simple meaning, the allusions, the homiletic, the mystical. But then the essence of the mitzvah. All of those are levels. External, internal. Kabbalah is the internal. Gemara, Nigla, Medrash is the external. Within that, there are levels, Pshat, Drush. But that's all one package. What's the one package? It's explaining and addressing what the mitzvah has to accomplish in the world. For you, in the world. Tikkun olam, fixing the world. That's one dimension to the mitzvahs. Partner with me, says Hashem, in perfecting my world. At the era, friends, of Tchias HaMeisim, that is over and done. The world is fixed. You don't need mitzvahs to fix the world. What does fixed mean? It's a home for God. It's one with God. V'nigla kved Hashem, the glory of God is revealed in creation. The flesh, the pasuk says, v'ro kol basar yachtav. All flesh will see as one. Ki pi Hashem diber, the mouth of God does speak and brings all existence into being every moment. I'm quoting from Isaiah. There's no need to fix the world. So one would think we don't need mitzvahs anymore. Done. The world is perfect. We don't need mitzvahs. So the Rebbe explains no.
Rabbi New? I thought that a mitzvah is a way that we connect to the Eibishter.
Let me continue to explain till the end, right? Then ask when I've concluded it. I'm sure it'll become clear. So this dimension of the mitzvah as you hear it now, fixing the world is achieved and done and over. Finished, gomarnu, over. And that's the meaning of mitzvahs, betelos, la'asid, lavai. There will no longer be mitzvahs, commandments. And commandment, as I just explained, means three things. Commander, commanded, and the act, or the object. The halacha is forever. What does it mean, halacha is forever? Because as we're explaining now, the deeper, essential level of the mitzvah is beyond fixing the world. What is it? What's the essence of the mitzvah? That's beyond commandments to a human being, to a Jew in this world, and a non-Jew, his mitzvahs, to perfect themselves, perfect the world, to grow, to earn a place in the hereafter. What could be beyond all of that? Answer. Pause. Cup of coffee. I'm reviewing what we learned last week and the week earlier. What is the essence of the mitzvah? Answer. It's the expression of Hashem. God has chosen to express himself 613 ways. Period. It's about his expression. There's no agenda here. Not in order to fix something else. It's expressing me. And like God exists for no reason, chas v'shalom, because if there's a reason for God's existence, you're worshiping the wrong God. Worship the reason that justifies him. So it's nonsense. God creates reason and purpose and function. He is utterly beyond. So just like God's beyond reason, he is, because he is. That's the best we can say. His existence is from his existence. His being's from his being. So too, here's the critical point here, so too, the mitzvahs at their core are beyond all reason. They're simply expressions of him. He's chosen to express himself in tefillin and in Shabbos and in mikveh in 613 ways and all of the oral law. That's forever. Like God's forever, that's forever. So it's very clear now that Rebbe's clear distinction here that has opened our eyes to a revelation that was never revealed or articulated before since the Torah was given. But we, you and I, are privy to it now before Mashiach comes. Gewalt and Gishring. Look what you just learned now. Gewalt, gewalt. Mitzvahs over. Halacha forever. And you understand now what that means. Now, having said that, we're going to explain, as I promised, we're going to address Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel and the different. Let's look at it in the text. Okay, so page 33, right hand. Right, Elza answered your question.
No.
Okay, now
no. Before, yeah. No. So the Avos, before we were given the Torah, followed all the commandments, and yet they didn't connect the way that we did. So once we got the Torah, so now we connected the issue simply because we were commanded to do. So if the time comes that the mitzvah is done without, like if it lost, it does it without, you said, like Shatnez and Lennon will automatically, they just wouldn't, nothing will exist. They won't, it just won't happen. So how are we really connecting if everything is like, it's second nature, it's no longer, you understand? The act of trying to connect is no longer going to be there. It's going to be natural. It's not going to be.
Yeah, yes, that's true. Yeah, yes. It'll be a natural connection, but we won't have to overcome resistance. Do this to refine this so that you can be I can be revealed to you in this. That's over. So the mitzvah's pure connection remains. What's missing? What's over? What's done with? What's history? What's no longer necessary is to refine the world in order that Hashem be revealed there. That's been done. So the mitzvahs will be the forever connection. It's an embrace. And let's add this to our discussion. Thank you for your question, which will clarify it. The 204, we know, right? The 613 mitzvahs correspond to, they break down into two categories, 248 positive, 365 negative, corresponding to the limbs and veins or primary veins of the body, which correspond to Hashem, Kavayochel, as a manner of speaking. God chooses to express himself in the words of the Zohar, 248 limbs of the king and 365 veins. They're called sinews, really they're veins. It's where the blood is contracted, directed. So when you hug somebody, you hug with every part of you. So in the era, this is post-Mashiach. This is way after Mashiach. This is Tchias HaMeisim. Tchias HaMeisim, that's what we're talking about. So that's going to be the forever uninterrupted hug with Hashem. This limb and that limb, and the hug has different dimensions to it. So different days, a different kind of hug, Shabbos, Yom Tov, etc. But what's not needed is there's something in between us embracing. Let's refine it, elevate it so we can be one. That's over. Now, since you mentioned the Avos, let's just explain the contribution of the Avos. The Avos, the forefathers, didn't have mitzvahs as we did. They didn't really do anything to change the world. Their mitzvahs did not overcome the world. Their mitzvahs are a preparation of man striving for God, reaching the limits of human ability. Now you're ready for the divine instruction by which to transform the world. It was, they laid the groundwork for transformation. They began the discussion. Avraham talked about one God, and there was a change to a degree in the mind. There was a change, but not really, because people went back to the old ways. It didn't last all that long. But the change was on a spiritual level. They didn't affect the world, hands-on action. That can only happen through a divine commandment, the mitzvah. And we've been doing that ever since the Torah was given, and will continue, as we all know now, in the Messianic era, and then will end at the end of the Messianic era, because the mitzvah component, fix the world, refine it, make it a place where God can be revealed, is done. He is, and will be revealed to us, connected to us naturally, spontaneously, fluidly, without any barriers, any resistance to overcome, nothing to refine, pure oneness, pure connection. What dissolves is the barrier between us and Hashem. So the halachas remain, the mitzvahs in that sense, but not as a mitzvah commandment you have to do. You're not separate, you don't have to do, we're one. And we're forever in this embrace, in all of the nuances of its embrace, as it changes each day of the week, each moment, right? Love is not a static expression of love. There's all kinds of expressions of love. There's a kiss, there's a wink, there's a hug, etc., etc. There's Yom Kippur, there's absolute oneness. There's all kinds of levels. And that happens naturally without resistance. That kind of answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you for asking it so that we have this clarity. Now let's continue Eisches. Yeah, Piyom, in light of the above, what has the place, page 33, bottom of the right hand side. If anybody's not clear, ask me. I'll try and clarify it further. So, in light of the above, that the fulfillment of the halachas in the future era, they're never nullified, in brackets, it's not going to be a commandment. That component's over. It'll just be, this is Torah. There's a nuance here which I did not go into, explained at length in the previous two chapters. So we'll just leave that. He's really going to the difference between Torah and mitzvahs, which is the same difference I just said before, but it's framed a little bit differently. At any rate, so Torah is that God's will, which means God's expression, not the will to accomplish something, but the will to self-express. Clear? I'm not saying anything I didn't say now or last week. So Yesh Levayir will explain based on what we just said now the following. Shegam halachas kebeis Hillel. Even the law that currently is like Beis Hillel, and in brackets, Binyanim shenechluko Beis Shammai Beis Hillel, in those areas where they were in dispute, the house of Shammai and Hillel. V'nifsik halacha kebeis Hillel, the laws like Beis Hillel. Ula'asid lo v'yachsu v'yifsik halacha Beis Shammai. We said before, the Mashiach who comes, the laws will be like Beis Shammai Even the laws of the way Hillel said, "Ein number are forever." How is that possible? We just said black and white that Hillel is only up to Yemei Mashiach. When Mashiach comes to be like Shammai, he says Hillel is now finished. And the Rebbe is saying no, that even the observance, and not only observance and as a commandment, but as a natural expression of the divine will be like Hillel forever as well. This sounds impossible to explain, but the Rebbe will. Let's go. So first we're going to examine critically the Mishnah that talks about the argument of Shammai and Hillel. The Mishnah where in Pirkei Avos, chapter 5, Mishnah 17, there it says, quote, Kol machlokes. The Mishnah says, the Mishnah talks about arguments not for the sake of heaven. So the Mishnah says that they're not if not for the sake of heaven, they won't endure. But it's for the sake of heaven that it will endure. I'm not sure if I'm going to ask it over here, but I'm going to ask the question, but it will be explained. Hello? You're saying that for the sake of heaven that it will endure? Who wants arguments to endure? You don't want it to endure, the opposite. You want it for the sake of heaven, the end is peace. What does it say? The end will endure. That's a question that the Rebbe doesn't ask here, but he asks elsewhere, will be answered in the course of explanation. Did you hear the question? The Mishnah says, if it's not for the sake of heaven, there'll be an end to the argument. In the end, it'll fizzle out. If the argument for the sake of heaven, it's forever. That's terrible. You would think the opposite. So that'll be explained as well. Just by the way, incidentally, it doesn't apply to us, thank God. Hope not. But this is like a joke, a parenthetical joke about argument and holiness. The Torah says, the Torah singles out in the forbidden labors on Shabbos. There's 39 labors you may not do on Shabbos, right? They're all derived from the way the Mishkan was constructed. There's two of them that are singled out. One of them is carrying. The other one was lighting a fire. Lighting a fire. And there's a discussion why it's singled out. For what reason? We would have derived it anyway, because it's a critical part of making the Mishkan. The pasuk says, you shall not light a fire in all your dwelling place on Shabbos. And again, it's singled out for whatever reason. Actually brings the two opinions. But here's the kind of the joke. This is Talmudic humor, Hasidic humor, whatever. Do not light a fire in all your dwelling places on Shabbos. On Shabbos? Because what happens is people come to shul on Shabbos and they have time. So during the week you come to shul, you daven, you run, you go to work. Can't get into trouble. But you come to shul on Shabbos, people chat and they talk, and here's the danger of fire, of gossip, of lashon hara. This one said this, one sitting by the kiddush, and God forbid, talking ill about. It could happen because you have time, and so it could happen that here's where you light the fire of divisiveness. The Torah says it's Shabbos, it's a day of relaxation. Don't abuse it for gossip and to cause, God forbid, division. On the contrary, cause unity. So that is this is not a Talmudic teaching. This is a Talmudic joke. But there's, like every joke, there is profound message. Now, off the table, back to our discussion. So the Mishnah said that let's look inside. Any argument for the sake of heaven, in the end will endure. As opposed to an argument that's not for the sake of heaven, in the end will fizzle out, will peter out. What's an example of an argument for the sake of heaven? What's an argument, by the way, for an argument? What's an example for an argument not for the sake of heaven? It says the Mishnah. Everybody remembers? What is it? Yossi? Korach and his whole congregation against Moishe. It says Korach v'Adosai. Yeah, that's an example for an argument not for the sake of heaven. In the end that's it. He was swallowed up, over, done. What's an example of an argument for the sake of heaven? That's what the Mishnah says. So the commentaries explain. Shehikshu al zeh, they asked, Eich royal loimer, amachlekes sheyiskayim. Here's the question. This is a new question now. It says The Mishnah just said now that the machloikes, the difference of opinion will endure. But it's not so. It's not so. But the ruling is only going to be and always is like one. But when you say the argument will endure, you're saying both sides will endure. How could both sides endure? It's not so. When Shammai and Hillel argued, the ruling is like whom? Like Hillel. So both sides aren't enduring. The machlokes doesn't endure. Only one opinion does, not the two opinions. So the Arizal answers. Number one, first answer. What does it mean both opinions endure? They're both the words of the living God, and therefore, and Beishamai's opinion also has shoydish l'mayla batzilus. He's reflecting a very lofty opinion from the lofty world of Atzilus. Rakshein halacha came, but in practical terms, it's not that way. But on a spiritual level, his opinion is valid on a very lofty level. So that's one answer that they want to offer. The Arizal says, what does it mean? What? That both opinions endure. It's true, practically speaking, it's like Hillel. But on the spiritual plane, it's also like Shammai. Because as we learned, right, Shammai expresses Gevurah of Atzilus and Hillel Chesed of Atzilus. So the opinions are very lofty. Practically, it's like one. So that's one answer, one attempted answer to explain Seifa Liskayim, that they both endure, one practically and one on a spiritual plane. Said the Arizal, not satisfactory. But this is not a satisfactory answer. Alosh Seifa Liskayim. The words of the Mishnah were both opinions will endure, meaning in the practical sense. And here we're saying no, practically not. Practically it's one, but on an ethereal, spiritual level, it's also the other. But that doesn't seem to be what the Mishnah is saying. The Mishnah is saying both opinions will endure. So what does that Arizal answer? As we told you last week and 2 weeks ago. Achen Arizal Pirish, if that Arizal says, in the end, Beis Shammai's opinion will be respected and will be acted upon in this world. And the end, Shammai's opinion will endure because it will be followed. When Mashiach comes, it will follow the law like Shammai and like Hillel. So the examples we learned in our previous discussion, all the various halachas there about Shema and Chanukah and the laws of at which point there's a fish impart ritual impurity, etc., will all be like Shammai then. So say for this guy. That's what the Arizal says. But the Rebbe says, wait a second, we're not satisfied. This doesn't really fully answer the problem. You have to understand a Moedica question. The Pirush Arizal, according to the Arizal's answer we just gave, what did the Arizal answer? To explain that when the Mishnah Pirkei Avos says that in the end the opinions will endure, he said in the future when Mashiach will come. For this guy Mamash, he concludes that Arizal, and indeed we will be fulfilling the mitzvah, that discussion that they're arguing about, like Shammai. The Rebbe says, wait a minute, what does this mean? It means in the end it will be fulfilled. What that is, I'll say. That the opinion of Beis Shammai will be fulfilled. And what won't we do then? We won't do Hillel. But the actual two opinions will not endure simultaneously at the same time. The two opinions will not, the Rebbe is asking. All that Arizal answered was, now it's Hillel, and then it's going to be Shammai. What did the Mishnah say? The Mishnah says the machlokes will endure. So the Mishnah is saying that the two opinions will endure forever. We don't have the answer to that. We just gave them different time slots. So it's a nice attempt. We're getting somewhere, but we really haven't explained what the Mishnah says if we take it exactly as it says. It says that any argument for the sake of heaven, the argument which means both views will endure. The Arizal is not telling us both will endure. He just says they'll have their time, they'll have their turn. Hillel up until Yemaisa Mashiach. I'm sorry, all the way including Yemaisa Mashiach. And Shammai, I'm sorry, Hillel up until Yemaisa Mashiach. And Hala and Shammai when Mashiach comes. We haven't answered our question. Unbelievable question. Let's finish the paragraph. Because there is us telling us when Shammai's opinion will be respected and carried out. Why? Because then the ruling will be ruled according to Shammai. We won't longer do it like Misilo says. So where's the machlokes enduring? It's not. It's one over the other. And furthermore, and a bigger question. He talking shit is battle. Halacha kebis Hillel. The Rebbe says this isn't fair. How is it that we've been doing for thousands of years lighting the Chanukah menorah like Hillel? To use an example, Mahadrim we add a candle every night in contrast to Beis Shammai, right? Who says you reduce from 8 down to 1. For example, so how is it that after Hanogas ben Yisrael Kadas Beisilo B'Meshech Kol HaDoros throughout all the generations in brackets ever since the law was passed like who? Like Hillel. So there has to we've been observing the law like Hillel, and now what? Goodbye, Shammai. This is not only insulting, but it's a dissent in the opinion of Beisilo, which contradicts the principle. It should always go holier. It should be more of Hillel, not less. HaMashiach, question mark, exclamation mark. And Mashiach comes, and we're going to be observing everything perfectly higher and higher and higher. Hillel, sorry, your history, finished, goodbye. We're replacing you with Shammai. It's not fair, it's not right, but it's not just a question of fair and right. It's deeper than that. It contradicts the principle that in Yiddishkeit we go higher. Hillel should be going deeper and higher, not discounted. What's going on? Why did they get a question? So we're up to, friends, just to follow the text, page 33, left-hand column, last 3 lines. Now comes the answer, the key to everything. So the Rebbe answers. Are we clear so far? He's following me? Yeah? Little nod of the head, wave of the hand, thumbs up. Shkoyach. That which the Arizal said we quoted moments ago. He said when Mashiach will come, the law will be like Beis Shammai. He meant next page 34. We're referring to the first era. When Mashiach first comes, the Messianic era, as opposed to what? As opposed to the next era, the revival of the dead, Tchias HaMeisim. But in the next era, so when Mashiach comes, it's going to be like Hillel, not Shammai. True. But the Mishnah says the machlokes, both opinions will endure forever and ever and ever and ever. That's when? The next era. By Tchias HaMeisim, Kishayichyu HaMeisim, when the dead are revived, Mitzvahs betelis lasud love is explained till now at length. The mitzvah, the need to command the separation, the 3 degrees of separation, no longer overdone. Mitzvahs as a means to refine their world and overcome resistance, no longer. Then there'll be both Shammai and Hillel. It'll be like Hillel and Shammai simultaneously, as we'll now explain. Let's begin the explanation. Explanation is, let's be clear where we're going. We're going to explain it. The truth is we already did really, because having learned this whole thing, I've kind of woven it in already. But I haven't spelled it out clearly. The Rebbe will for us to do so now. But let's be clear what we just said. So there's 3 eras. Pre-Mashiach, Mashiach, post-Mashiach, revival of the dead. Pre-Mashiach, Laws like Hillel. Pre-Mashiach. Post-exile in Mashiach, Shammai. Post-Mashiach, Shammai and Hillel. And you got to be thinking, how can you have both at the same time? Well, let's see. But to be clear, exile, Hillel, Mashiach, Shammai, post-Mashiach, Tchias HaMeisim, Shammai and Hillel. Now let's learn it. Rabbi's explanation is as follows. All of the arguments throughout the Talmud between the schools of Shammai and Hillel. These ones say, whatever the case is, impure. And this one says pure. We had the example. The fish. At which point does it contract ritual impurity? Taken in the net, or it's only dead, right? Another example, whatever they're arguing. These say forbidden, Shammai, can't do it. Hillel says you can do it, whatever the scenario there is. These say this is invalid. Some say this is kosher. So they're arguing all kinds of areas of Jewish law. Impurity, purity, forbidden, permitted, valid, invalid. Now the Gemara says, listen to these words. The Gemara says in Sanhedrin, whatever, going to the whole story there, but the Gemara says, for a long time, there was no arguments in Israel. Whenever there was a question, you went to the high court, you went to the whole system. The lower court, the high court, and the Supreme Court, the Sanhedrin that convened in the Beis HaMikdash, and they ruled, and that was the end of it. Two opinions. Every question was brought straight to the top, finished. But then exile came, and then came the students of Shammai and Hillel, and the Gemara is critical that they did not, that's what the Gemara says, they did not serve Leishimshu Kol Tzorcha. Not that they weren't brilliant. They didn't serve their masters adequately. Then started the whole argument. Then the two schools of thought developed, and the argument developed, so much so that it appeared that like there's two Torahs. They argued in so many cases, two Torahs. Now, we're not going to learn now. What you just heard me say now, friends, is something that is what? Is negative, is unsavory. What I'm looking for, it's something unvirtuous. What's the opposite of unvirtuous? How do you say unvirtuous? Everybody has the right word, tell me. That's how it appears on the surface. I'm not going to go into now. It's all part of the divine plan, that there should be this descent, not for now. Like everything, the whole descent, the whole golus, everything is all on one level. It is negative. It's a result of lack of observance, of attachment. Exile is a sin. It's a punishment as a result of sin. That's on one level, but on a deeper level, it's all part of the plan. Likewise here, I just told you that the whole division and different views is because the students of Shammai and Hillel were not plugged in. They were brilliant, but they were not devoted enough to their masters, and therefore they had all this division. That sounds like something that's purely negative and undesirable, maybe what I'm looking for, but it's all part of the desired divine intent, not for now. But what are we talking about now? Let's get back to our subject. So this whole division, continuing this whole division between Shammai and Hillel, so much so that it appears like there's two Torahs, says the Gemara. Look at the italics there, please. The whole division is in the context of the commandment to the person to fix the world. Skip the brackets because that's related to a previous discussion. On this level, the world needs fixing still. Before that happens, what are we dealing with? We're dealing with there's a person and he's independent and separate from God, and he could sin and he does sin, and there's a world that's unrefined. And therefore, very deep point now. We're talking about a world that's locked into its own sense of self and independence. And therefore, from the perspective of, I said that, the perspective of this perspective, there is based there's division. There's division. When there's separation from God, the result of that is division. I feel separate from you and you from me. Even in holiness, there's division. There's the view of Shammai, there's the view of Hillel, which means there's chesed and there's gevurah. Where Hashem's true essence is revealed, which is one, all division dissolves. It's all one. But where Hashem's essence is not revealed, even in the world of holiness, but there's some degree of the tzimtzum, God being obscured and veiled, even though there's light that emanates, but the essence is veiled. If light emanates, then light can be fragmented to different colors. The rainbow, different colors. The light can be contained in different vessels, different film, color, different colored vessels, so it appears to be red and yellow and green, or projected through a film, creating all kinds of shapes and colors. That's light, but essence can't be fragmented. Hashem can't be fragmented. So till that happens, which is, we'll see, but there's holiness and there's revelations, everything fine and good. But that still implies different manifestations. There's chesed, there's gevurah, there's hillel, there's shammai. It's all holy, but they're different. And in their worlds, they're at odds. Shammai says this way and Hillel says this way. Chesed has this perspective, gevurah has that perspective, and they are different, and they are contrary, and they clash. That's all what, if you like, the light of Torah, the will of God as it manifests in creation. Aval, let's go to the source, to the essence, as it is within Hashem, not about fixing, not about doing, not about otherness, because all otherness is dissolved and one with God. But if we trace back the halachas, the mitzvahs, they go beyond mitzvahs and we trace them back. Not about commandments to something separate that has to do. It's about Hashem. The essence of the mitzvah is not a means for an end by which to fix a fragmented world, because the world is no longer fragmented. And here now discussion was simply we're going looking there at that level of the mitzvah. Ella, what are mitzvahs? Not about fixing, but what are they? In the bold and italic, they're the pure will or expression of God, not a will that says, I want something else. The will is, I want me to be known, expressed. Very kind of different will. My self-expression, that I want to get something. I want to express self. That's the true will of mitzvah. Skip the brackets. Then listen carefully. Then even the different opinions. Shammai and Hillel, both of the words of the living God. It's all one Torah. All given from one shepherd. Let me say it by heart and let's see it in the text, the incredible words in the text. I know this is hard to wrap our heads around, so you got to open up the head. Open up. The mitzvahs at their core, not as commandments, but as the will of Hashem. Hashem says, I want to express myself like Shammai, like Hillel, and all of them. They're all pure expressions of my will. One not more than the other. So therefore, in the year of Tchias HaMesim, when it's not about fixing the world, it's both at the same time. As he goes on to explain, in terms of fixing the world, each one has its place. Let me just tell you, basically, their different role. We'll see it inside the Sikh a little bit. In fixing the world, friends, which is what? Making the world a home for God. There's in general, there's many, many steps to that, which is why we're in Golos for thousands of years. And we've been working on this process, on this project, on this great construction project of making the world a home for God ever since the Torah was given. And the groundwork, as Elza was saying, was already put in place by the forefathers. It started with that. Since the dawn of creation, it's been one long project, make the world a home for God. Now, overall, making a home, there's generally two stages. There's two stages. There's the basic infrastructure, the basic walls and the building and the plumbing and the basic stuff. And then that's a building. But then what makes it your home is the decoration, the color scheme, and the details that turn the building into your home. That's very subtle, that's very nuanced, as opposed to the basic plumbing and construction that is deep and raw and so, and practical and pretty easy to do. In the sense, bang the nail, yeah. The nuance and the instruction, that's very refined, that's already getting to art, that's already a very ethereal world. Each person has their taste. It's not a practical thing. Mitzvahs, initially, till the final era, have an agenda. It's the external dimension of the mitzvah. Build the home. Fix the world. So Hillel and Shammai are arguing. What is the argument? It's different levels. Chesed and Gevurah. Chesed is this way, and Gevurah is that way. Hillel's talking about, listen, we've got to put in the infrastructure, we've got to bring it down into the earth and put down those foundations. And practically, we've got to get the bricks in the mortar. Everybody can do that. So the law is always like Hillel, because Hillel now is addressing the mission of fixing the world on a level that everybody can and must participate. It's practical, it's action. And that's why the law is like Hillel. Once that's done, now we're ready to make this home into this nuanced, beautiful home. That's Shammai. We're all going to be at the Shammai level then. The nuance, this is elevation, this is refined. It has to do with fire, which is light, and it exposes its nuance. Without going to all of the detail, now we're ready for Shammai's contribution to the home, which is a completely higher level. It takes the building and makes it a home. So everybody's got to do it like Hillel stage 1. Now we're already like Shammai stage 2. Unbelievable explanation, friends. Here. But that's all what? In terms of the mitzvahs being what? The agenda to fix the world. Now the home is done. Both the infrastructure and all of the nuance. That's the third year, Tchias HaMeisa. No fixing anymore. So what's now? Now Hashem says, Kinderlach. The view of Shammai and Hillel at its core goes beyond fixing the world. It's the expression of me, my will. And they're both equally me. Chesed is me, Gevurah is me. We'll learn deeper, we're running out of time. Infinite is me, finite is me. It's all me. And therefore it's going to be me, an expression of me simultaneously. Gone beyond the gender fixing. It's the expression of Hashem himself. All right? So this will continue, God willing, next week. Yes? We follow, we've got a general outside, we're starting to come together. We'll learn more and more, it gets clearer and clearer. And this is a game changer, friends, in our whole attitude to Yiddishkeit now, not just then. Okay?
Shkoyach, Rabbi. Shavua Tov, everybody.
Thanks for joining.
Thank you. Can I just ask you a quick question?
Yeah, I'm gonna close.